Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
We have an absolutely jammed-packed broadcast for you today. We have Webster Griffin Tarpley and Attorney Phil Berg joining each other simultaneously, coming up in T-minus 32 minutes from now. And they're going to be discussing the huge new developments on the birth certificate issue. The new governor-elect, who will be in office in just a few weeks, early next year, of Hawaii, says that he's going to release the original blueprint with the signatures, the actual birth certificate. And we've seen this flip-flop from Chris Matthews and others who said, you know, they've released the birth certificate. This is the birth certificate. Now they admit, oh, you actually couldn't get in the CIA with a receipt of birth certificate. You have to show your blueprint. You have to show the original with the signatures. So this is a big deal. And have they manufactured one? Or is it a bluff? Are they going to really release it? Why didn't they do this 2 years ago? And people for over 2 years have been demanding it. I mean, if there was any question about my birth, people are making an issue, boom. You just go to the Bureau of Statistics, even if you've lost it. That stuff's traded on the international market as collateral for the dollar. That's on record. The government's got it. The IMF, the World Bank's got it. All the big agencies have it. The big private corporate agencies have it. And they would just release it. So that is coming up. Webster Tarpley and Phil Berg. Mike Adams, the health ranger, editor of Natural News, with key information dealing with the bills to take over the family farm, the family ranch. It's more than that, and he excises out the subsections in a new article detailing how it's really part of a global enforcement of Codex Alimentarius, with the United States trying to empower that UN program by stealth. Kind of like Obama was in the news this morning saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead with carbon taxes, federal home inspections, federal zoning, total control. I don't care if Congress didn't pass it. I'm ordering the bureaucracy to move forward. He also went ahead and announced, hey, guess what? The death panels are still there. We're going to cut your health care because we're liberal and loving. And Bill Gates is out teaching folks how great it is as well. So Mike Adams coming on. Porter Stansberry will be popping in for 30 minutes to continue with his prediction and why he's predicting that the dollar in next year, sometime during 2011, will officially not be the world reserve currency anymore. That's already starting to happen with China and Russia no longer dealing in dollars. And then, of course, former Dallas Cowboy, all-star guy, Mark Stepnoski will be joining us with one of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, who, of course, really helped wake up Geraldo Rivera and others on Fox News. They'll be joining us to talk about 9/11 Truth in the last hour and some big announcements on that front with the Buildingwhat campaign that we launched here a few months ago, I guess 6 months ago or so, that's now had such a big effect in New York City. So jam-packed broadcast for you today. I'm going to attempt... Of course, I didn't do this yesterday. I covered some of it. I'm going to attempt to just graze through at least the surface. I don't have 100-plus articles. I've only got about 50 or so, and we'll probably cover 2 or 3. But they're all up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now. And just so much information on those sites. Great job that the overall internet crew is engaged in at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And great job to the listeners out there spreading the word about Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. They just continue to break records in people visiting them. The two twin sites, Liberty and Justice, up there fighting hard. The reason we're having so much success reaching more people with this vital message of liberty, exposing the tyranny of the New World Order, is because of you, the listeners of the syndicated radio broadcast, simulcast via video at prisonplanet.tv. We'll be right back. Strap yourselves in. Key transmission straight ahead. Jam-packed transmission today. Webster Tarpley and Phil Berg joining us in about 25 minutes on the huge developments on Obama's birth certificate. We'll give you the latest on that coming up. Mike Adams on the fact that they're having, quote, a flu pandemic over in Europe, over in England, despite the fact that it's being triggered by the flu vaccine itself, which is admitted. Porter Stansbury pops in with more on dollar devaluation. And we're also going to have former Dallas Cowboy lineman, star Dallas Cowboy Mark Stepnoski on with an engineer with the latest 9/11 developments in a program that they're launching. That'll be announced here on the broadcast today, coming up in about 2 hours from now. Okay, let me just do this. I always try to do it, and then I don't. But let me just read to you some of the headlines I've got here that are up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now on this live 29th day of December 2010. It's about to be 2011. Then it'll be 2012. Then 2013. And our lives go by like the twinkling of an eye. This happened over the holidays when I was out of town. And I've mentioned this before because it's actually come out before that when we get all these internal FBI, Homeland Security reports, I mean, the latest a few months ago was in Pennsylvania. They didn't just have Homeland Security. They had Israelis spying on the legislature, wiretapping, you name it. They had the U.S. Army involved. I mean, again, this is a criminal government. They're spying on the Congress. They're spying on the legislature. It's not the government. The government is the legislature. The government is the Congress. The illegitimate rogue bureaucracy that works for the offshore banks is the enemy. Why do you think these different agencies going back more than 60 years, every time you turn around, get caught running secret torture centers, secret biological, chemical, radiological testing centers? It's not about testing the chemicals, biologicals, radiologicals. They can test those on guinea pigs and get the exact same ratio. Okay, if it kills a rat or a guinea pig or a rabbit or a dog or a pig, it's going to kill a human. It works the exact same way. Plus, it's immoral. That's a side issue. They have created armies of cadres of people that will put a baby in a radiation chamber and murder them, that will fly over our troops during a drill and nerve gas them. And then they practice how to cover it up. I said I'd get into the news. It's just this morning I was jogging, and it just really hit me again just how evil these people are and how much danger we're all in if we don't resist them, because they're trying to totally take over every facet of society. I was sent more internal FBI manuals and internal fear-mongering propaganda that they give local businesses. They're going to the gun shops, they're going to the tattoo parlors, the hair-cutting places, the Walmarts, the farmer supply facilities. I've got it right here. Communities against terrorism, potential indicators of terrorist activity. And it says, what should I consider suspicious? First thing, new customer who is not from local area, and it goes on from there. And the first thing the FBI people say when they come in and talk to the different businesses is, do you want to stop in Oklahoma City? Well, you're going to be our little agent now, our little informant. And then the next meeting, it's, do you know about gun owners? Do you know about people criticizing the government in your area? I mean, I have this confirmed literally hundreds of times. And we have their internal documents. The MIAC, the Homeland Security, the list goes on and on. So, again, they tell you, oh, we're here to stop al-Qaeda. Then it's, oh, we're here to stop Tim McVeigh. And then it's, oh, we're here to stop the Ron Paul people. We're here to stop the folks that want us out of the UN. We're here to stop the people that want to cut the size of government. What was in the Pennsylvania information that got leaked out, and the head of Homeland Security in that state had to step down? But it was all under federal auspices. It was all under federal directives. It was in the manuals that we published, in the internal reports that we published and local newspapers in Pennsylvania published. It said right there, they're protesting, and these members of the legislature are protesting higher taxes, and that threatens the infrastructure of the government. I mean, they actually sit there in FBI and Homeland Security meetings and say, these states want to cut government. That'll cut our pay. That'll cut our positions. That's a threat to government. See, it's government now against the people. And so, wiretap these people in the legislature. Follow them. This member of the legislature is running a pro-gun group. He's a potential terrorist. And then they couldn't get the state police to spy on the members of the legislature, so they brought Israelis in. And it's all on record. It's all illegal. And nobody goes to jail. What came out 4 or 5 years ago? That MI6 and MI5 spy on every member of the parliament in England. The parliament is the supposed government. What is the rogue police agencies doing? That's what happened in Nazi Germany. That's who Hitler went out and recruited. He went out and recruited the cops, the law enforcement, the military people, and then a bunch of street thugs and criminals to back them up. What was in the news 2 days ago? All over the country, the Army and National Guard is recruiting felons out of prisons as their backup. They introduced it to the public that, oh, it's for disasters. But when you read the fine print, and civil unrest. What did Stalin do? He opened up the prisons. Who did they use to enforce on the police and the military if they didn't follow orders? Hardcore brigades of hardened murderers. Who brought Hitler to power? The SA. If you look up the statistics, more than half of them were hardcore criminals. Now, the hardcore criminals need to know that after the full tyranny's brought in, you're going to be put in prison or killed. It's done everywhere. Soviet Union, Communist China, Fidel Castro, Pol Pot, Hitler. You need to know this. I mean, they're following an exact blueprint we've seen repeated over and over again. Julius Caesar used the mob. He used criminals as his main enforcers in Rome. This is not new. We know exactly the case of tyranny we've got, and it's a nasty one. It's the nastiest I've ever studied. And we're watching it live time unfold, and it is bad. So, you might want to call the FBI, as we've done live on air, and tell them if they want to investigate Oklahoma City. I mean, we have their own internal FBI memos that have been gotten through FOIA lawsuits. And in one lawsuit, they blacked out part. Another lawsuit, years later, they blacked out the other. So the lawyers were able to put both together, and the feds and Southern Poverty Law Center were running the op out of Elohim City, as police officers told us. But, of course, they were murdered shortly after. Terrence Yakey, Cop of the Year, and others. They tortured them, something fierce. But I guess it's terrorism to expose the ATF bombing that building. But continuing, ATF even tested blowing up a Ryder truck a few months before. That's on record, but nothing suspicious. They even tested it out in the desert on record. I mean, they think you're so stupid. And they think the rest of you that are awake are going to be cowards and go, well, it's true, but I'm not going to speak out against them. They might get me. They've already got us. All we can do is stand up against this crew of murderers. So, FBI, you're running all over, getting everybody ready for the white Al-Qaeda, telling them Tim McVeigh's about to hit. That means your bosses are about to hit. Or maybe some Brits or Israelis you're going to hire, or Germans. We know we've used all those groups. We know our government has done that, but it's not our government. So I just thought I'd mention this story that we never got to last week. I mean, it was on InfoWars and Prison Planet, but I wasn't here. Florida Fusion Center surveilled Ron Paul's campaign for liberty. Well, good folks inside the Army leaked to us over almost 2 years ago that in late 2008, on In the Fed Day, in Texas, our group up in Dallas and Ron Paul in Houston, the Army was there in plain clothes, and it said, do not let them know you're Army. They may kill you. They're terrorists. Ron Paul may just pull out 6 shooters and just start blasting. I mean, they do it with a straight face, okay? Because Ron Paul knows who the enemy is, and Alex Jones knows who's the enemy. So every few years when I'm in a Target parking lot or in a dark parking lot at night, they like to have Army guys and in suits come up and get around me and tell me I better watch myself. It's all just letting me know. Just letting me know I'm not in a free country. So they can ship in their narcotics and kidnap little kids all over the world and have black sites where they torture people because they like it. They build a world so they can have their party. The average good, well-meaning person that joins the military is compartmentalized, has no idea this is going on. But it's in the hundreds now of Army, Marine Corps, Navy investigators that do their job with corruption all over the world, and they always get killed. How many people got to get killed here? You see, and by the way, they're not going to be satisfied with all the power and raping and corruption. They want more. That's why they're out in the open going, yeah, we got black sites. Yeah, we torture people. White House puts out memos saying you can bury people alive. You can torture their children in front of them. And then the Army report comes out and they admit that that's what's going on. Because they like it. They like it. You figured that out yet? They like it. And smart murderers and psychos, they don't go around just grabbing women off the side of the street in their yellow Volkswagen. they go and they get into power. And that's basic criminology. They're called highly intelligent, high operation level psychopaths. Highly functioning psychopaths is the actual term. And they run the world, and they're building a giant torture center, just a giant Disney World for themselves. And it's their Valhalla. It's their heaven. And every time a Hitler or Stalin gets to build their Disneyland, it's just mass death, black uniforms, raping, people being stomped to death, burning cities, and then it runs like a disease and burns itself out. But the globalists call it the final revolution. In all their white papers, they say, we're not going to let that happen. With our high-tech system, we're going to manage it all, and it's going to get even better. I mean, they just can't wait to rape your wife and blow your children's heads off and torture your children in front of you. They love it. And that's why it came out in mainstream news yesterday. They're training law enforcement in the U.S. to, quote, kill whole Muslim families in the U.S., including their children, in cold blood. And the cops, when questioned, said, we're ready to do it. Of course, they're going to say, now it's not the Muslims. Go get that family on that farm. Get them. We're not going to fix this country with half measures. Okay, let's just admit how evil and out of control and illegitimate the criminals are that have taken over the unelected bureaucracy. In fact, we've got links to mainstream news articles, to the Orlando Sentinel, to all these reports in Kurt Nemo's article from last week. Florida Fusion Center surveilled Ron Paul's campaign for liberty. They didn't just list him if you got an American flag on your car, get us out of the UN sticker on your car, or if you're flying the Gadsden flag, or you like Bob Barr or Ron Paul. I mean, these are upstanding, respected people that you may be a terrorist. Now they're going in. They're surveilling. Public Intelligence, an international consortium of independent researchers, reports that a fusion center in Florida snooped on Ron Paul supporters and other political groups. See, and that's now been admitted in the last year by Napolitano and others. Over 95% of their operations are against real Americans. I mean, if you're really what this country was founded on, if you are a good, decent person that doesn't want foreign banks robbing us and doesn't want to lose your liberty and don't want the dollar destroyed, you're the enemy. Haven't people gotten this yet? The government is bad. And it's not going to get fixed just with some Republicans up there in Congress. Now, if you take over all the state houses through the legislative system, which is what they're really worried about, that's who they're surveilling, trying to get dirt to feed it out to local cops and the threat fusion centers to set you up. But we've got to have courage. We've got to be bold. But I've said it many times. It's not really courage. For people that aren't informed, they have to have courage to stand up. But when you know that these people are basically trying to set something up worse than Stalin and Hitler, then, I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you think somebody's happy when they go open up their business at 7 a.m. in the morning and there's people in there robbing it and they've got to go out to their car, get their gun, and go in and shoot them? No, it's just got to be done. And it's the same thing here in the info war. You think I'm happy this is going on? I've got to risk my life? No. But it's got to be done. They're there. They're doing it. We know they're crooks. We know they're sick. I mean, these are really sick. This isn't, look, if this was just boss hog corruption, I would know that it would take decades to lead to something worse. And I wouldn't be as worried. I'd be speaking out against it. This is not boss hog corruption. This is not Sheriff Pico Train or whatever his name is. Roscoe Pico Train. You know, writing tickets to folks that don't deserve it, making a little extra money, being corrupt. That's bad and that's wrong. This is really nasty, devilish stuff. This is wicked upon wicked. This is quadruple wicked. It's so wicked, I can't even believe they're this wicked. But you notice they're operating out in the open now. Telling you secret arrest and torture's good. Admitting they're surveilling all of us without warrants and it's illegal. Florida Fusion Center surveilled Ron Paul's campaign for liberty. The event spanned the spectrum. They got this through FOIA request. From a summit hosted by Ron Paul's campaign for liberty to anti-war protests conducted by Code Pink and Veterans for Peace. While the documents make no mention of specific threats arising from the events, they do indicate that the Fusion Center monitors political activity in a variety of forms and sometimes requests law enforcement officers to report on constitutionally protected activities. And it goes on to how the Central Florida Intelligence Exchange was established with an $850,000 Department of Homeland Security grant. Then they build them in all your local towns with more money. Here's another one by Kurt Nimmo, the day after this last story from last week. On December 24th, Tennessee Fusion Center puts ACLU on terrorist list. Oh, yeah, the ACLU, they're real terrorists. I may not like them promoting abortion. I may not like the fact that they won't defend the Second Amendment. They're certainly progressive socialist types. But the ACLU are not terrorists. In fact, they've got some good branches and some good members, and some good work is done by them. And the ACLU is what we make it. And the ACLU has fought the Patriot Act and all the rest of it, and they're standing up against the airport grope downs. Well, what happens to them? On Thursday, we reported on a Florida Fusion Center snooping on Ron Paul and Campaign for Liberty. Now we discover a Fusion Center in Tennessee has put the ACLU on a terror list as terrorist. The Chattanooga Free Press reported that Tennessee anti-terrorism officials, not servants, officials, placed the legislative lobbying organization on an internet map detailing terrorism entities and other suspicious activity. And the group warned schools to ensure holiday celebrations are inclusive. Got to watch out about that. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. We've got bombshell intel on Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama, the birth certificate. Before I go to attorney Phil Berg and doctor of history, Webster Griffin Tarpley, expert on Barack Hussein Obama, real name Barry Soetoro, with big developments on the birth certificate issue, huge developments. And before they leave us, we'll play part of a Chris Matthews clip from just yesterday. I was covering Tennessee Fusion Center puts ACLU on terror list, and they put them on the list for telling schools to make the holiday season inclusive. Now, that's political manipulation. They know in the polls, and I've seen national polls of above 75%, outraged by banning Christmas, banning red and green in schools. That's going on. So they do little politically correct things that are seen as politically correct by conservatives to make it look legitimate. Meanwhile, they're spying on Ron Paul, liberals. They spy on everybody. That's how this political correctness works. So I just wanted to add that final point. You know, that sounds reasonable to conservatives. Yeah, the ACLU are terrorists. They want to restrict Christmas. This is all part of a psyop. Now, and we've got Mike Adams coming up for 30 minutes in the next hour. Then Porter Stansbury on the fact that the dollar is moving towards losing its world reserve currency status. We've got former top Dallas Cowboy lineman Mark Stepnoski and a engineer coming on to talk about new 9/11 truth developments and an operation they're launching. So it'll be that news will be broken here coming up in the last hour today. In fact, maybe I should play that Chris Matthews clip now. Do we have that queued up? I want to play a few minutes of this, and then we'll go to Tarpley and Berg together to get their take on what this signifies. I've got my take. I'm going to give it first here briefly. But this is Chris Matthews recently talking about this new governor, and now the governor, Democrat Neil Abercrombie, has vowed to release the birth certificate. So that's the new development. And the big change here is the full clip's up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. It's about 8 minutes long. We're just going to play a minute or two. Several times, Matthews says, could you get in the CIA with just a receipt of birth certificate? They finally admitted that it's a receipt, not the birth certificate, not the blueprint, not the photostat, not the one with the signatures and the feet print like all of us have. It's a receipt of it, okay? And you can't get in the FBI with one of those. You can't get in the CIA with one of those. You certainly can't be president with one of those. And it's the Constitution. Now, I don't know if he was really born in Kenya or not. The evidence shows he was. But I know he gave up his citizenship in Indonesia and became Barry Soetoro. And then now there's another name we find out about. So that right there under law means you can't be president. But I'm about to go to both these men briefly for the rest of the hour. But here is the clip of them basically panicking. Some polls show 60%, some 50%. The poll they cite's only 20-something%. Don't believe he's really an American or natural born. You can make a phone call and write a letter, and in about a month, a copy of your original birth certificate comes. I know, because I lost mine once and had to get it. Okay? And they don't take a receipt of a birth certificate to get a new passport or driver's license. They want the original. Okay? Or to get in school, they want the original. So he was too busy to have one of his thousands of employees get it. And this has been an issue even during the campaign. Huge issue. He just has got more important things. Not become president of the U.S. This is routine. Get the kid back in the country, falsify that he was born here so he could be a natural born and get all those benefits. And more than half the family are on record being CIA and big foundation operatives. And then finally, I'm not going to play the whole clip because we're running out of time here, but Matthews goes on and says, well, you couldn't get in the CIA with this receipt. You know, and he holds up a copy of his that is the photostat and says, we need to see this. So I want to bring up Phil Berg and Webster Tarpley. Phil Berg, going back 2.5 years, he was the first to really question things. Tarpley looked into it, began questioning it, has written books on the subject. And this whole thing is very, very suspicious. But briefly from both of you, a 2-minute statement from you, Phil Berg, attorney at law, on what you think this signifies, then a 2-minute statement from Tarpley on this, and then I've got other questions.
Sure, thanks. It's Phil Berg. I appreciate it. I filed my first lawsuit August 21st, 2008, before he was even nominated at the Democratic National Committee, and I sued Obama and the Democratic National Committee, but they were cohorts together. I think the significance of this, first off, I agree with you. The birth certificate issue is really not the issue because he was adopted in Indonesia, and whatever citizenship he had in the United States, he lost at that time. He could have renewed it between the ages of 18 and 21. There's no evidence he ever did. There's no evidence he ever changed his name. I believe his legal name was Barry Soetoro. Where you can use an alias, you can use an alias, but not for fraudulent purposes, and that's what he's doing.
And that's why everything's so sealed.
Right, and I think the significance with Chris Matthews saying it, I think he's falling into a trap, which is wonderful. I think Abercrombie really believes that Obama was born in Hawaii, and he wants records released, and he's going to have a rude awakening. You don't see Obama just saying, okay, I'll release it, because up until one point, they only said out there, we looked at his vital records. They never said we looked at his birth certificate. And I think the significance of that is that I think they have the Kenya birth certificate locked up there in Hawaii, which they perhaps did when they got a short form or the document, like the document they produced. It's outrageous, but I think now it's coming our way. More and more people are coming our way. Obama's dropping in the polls. His real name is Soetoro. I have one case significant still going. We just need to raise the money for it to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, we have the school records that it's Soetoro, and you were laughed at 2 years ago about that. Now it's all over the news. They've been trying to psychologically inoculate people to this now. Just a year ago, we were kooks. Now it's, oh, his name is Barry Soetoro. He did worship at the Muslim mosque. His mother didn't like it, but he said, I'm a Muslim. You know, and I'm not saying it's bad that he's a Muslim. The point is he lied about it. Now all of that's coming out in the newspapers, but they're spinning it like it's cute and sweet. Let's get Tarpley's take on that.
Well, thank you, Alex. I think the big issue behind all of this is the blackmail of Obama, that whatever you think about this one way or the other, it's clear that he is blackmailed, that he cannot produce a birth certificate for whatever reason.
They won't release high school, college. They seal it all. They act like it's...
Quite right. But especially on this constitutional issue of the natural-born citizen, it seems to me that there's a cartel. Foreign intelligence agencies, you can just go through a list of countries, maybe groups in the Pentagon, certainly groups in Wall Street, are blackmailing Obama to kingdom come. And there's a very significant vested interest in this. If you look at the Rupert Murdoch news media, they don't seem to be that interested in the birth certificate issue. I think the main reason is that Rupert Murdoch and his cohorts are blackmailing Obama to a fare-thee-well. Look at this tax monstrosity that just went through. Tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for Paris Hilton. As Mitch McConnell, the Republican, said, when they had Bush and control of 2 houses of Congress, the Republicans could not get the deal on the estate tax that they just got from Obama with a Democratic majority.
Well, Webster, you know I disagree with your big government views, but I want to talk about this issue.
This is Obama betraying his own base.
No, I understand that. The guy was financed by Wall Street. What do you expect? But
it's a better deal. It's a better deal than the Republicans got even under Bush. So this I think indicates the dimensions of blackmail, right? Endless war in Afghanistan, these sellouts on the home front, all calculated to enrage his Democratic base. Now, the other side is the Republicans are coming to town. All eyes here in Washington are on Darrell Issa. Darrell Issa is going to be the head of the House Government Operations Committee. And it normally would be up to Darrell Issa to step up and say, I'm the congressman from California, I'm the head of this new committee here, and I just want to see Obama's birth certificate. So that may be going on behind the scenes. The other thing, of course, is the Clintons. It may indeed be that there are moves inside the Democratic Party to dump Obama. He is a disaster, and from their point of view, and to some degree from mine, what you have with Obama is going to be a series of betrayals and sellouts and capitulations as long as he's in office. It's going to be an absolute disaster from the point of view of people in the Democratic Party. Obama ran on saying, I'm not Bush, and now with his tax bill he says, I am Bush. Surprise, I really am Bush. So this is political suicide.
But Webster, let me go back here and then have you finish up your comment, and then go back to Berg, and then we'll come back to you. My question for you is, and I didn't have time to play the whole clip, what does it signify to have them change course in the middle of the stream and go from stonewalling and calling this receipt of a certificate, and now admitting that we haven't seen his real birth certificate?
It is an attest, I think, an attest. It says that we have on deposit someplace else. This is not the document, is the idea behind it. Well, two things. One is it could be the Clinton machine or some other Democratic machine that is beginning to soften him up, beginning to encourage somebody to come forward to challenge him in the Democratic primaries, which is, I think, absolutely essential for the political health of the country from many points of view. And or it can be the people who own Matthews. Now, this would be Immelt of General Electric, right, who owns that network. Immelt may be saying, well, the Republicans are coming in. I want to cover my bets. I want to also take control of the issue a little bit.
Well, Tarpley, I mean, you predicted this a year ago or more that they'd throw him under the bus going into the 2012 election. We've seen Washington Post editorial pages calling for him to step down in the last month. This is really happening. Let's get Attorney Phil Berg's take on this.
No, I think you really see a change, and I think it's significant. I think they're going to, perhaps you're right on the Clinton thing, because there's word that she's going to step down as Secretary of State, and that could be setting up for her to run for president to get out of the administration right now. But the big thing is, there's so many people in this country that agree with us that Obama is a fraud, a phony. This is the biggest hoax against the United States of America in our history. He's an imposter. And think about it. When he first took office, he insisted on having his BlackBerry, which you see on his belt as he's walking around, because as Webster stated, I believe he's being blackmailed by the powers that be in this country, and the powers that be are money people. And he's told what to do. His speeches, most of his speeches are off the teleprompter. They're written by someone else. He delivers a good speech when he's on a teleprompter. Other than that, he doesn't. So I think I agree with Webster at this point. They might be ready to get rid of him at this point, and that will help us. But I stood there from the beginning, and I really believe he's a fraud and a phony. And the words I used, if it was really false, they'd be after me. They'd be suing me, but they haven't done that. And we're on the right track. And I just mentioned briefly, it's real significant. The case I have getting ready for the U.S. Supreme Court, because it was turned down, I'm claiming that Obama is not only not natural born, he's not naturalized, and therefore his term as a U.S. Senator was fraud. and therefore the salary and benefits of $1 million should go back to the U.S. Treasury. Obviously, if he couldn't be a U.S. senator, he can't be president. So
and everything he signed is null and void. And whether it's from the left perspective or the right perspective, anyone who looks at that health care bill knows it was written by insurance companies. It's a scam. Even if you're a socialist out there, you know, it's not what you were asking for. We need to get rid of it. And so, Tarpley, is this not good news, though, if Obama is brought down? Because then so much of what he's done is discredited?
Certainly, to get Obama out now would be a public service. To have this issue come to the fore finally, to have Phil Berg's work of many years now put back in the public spotlight, because otherwise it's going to be a disaster from every point of view. And again, if you are blackmailed in this way, you can't be president. You can't carry out the constitutional office if you're constantly blackmailed by virtually every secret intelligence agency in the world, Wall Street, and God knows what other cliques are doing this. So unfortunately, it's a painful process. But I'm afraid this is the situation we're now in, and the path of, what can we say, least damage to the country and the Constitution is for Obama to be removed from office. And again, I would like to see Darrell Issa, if he's such a fire-breathing guarantor of the public interest. How about a quick subpoena for a birth certificate? Let's get to the bottom of this. That could be done next week. The Republicans take over next week. So, Darrell Issa, where's the subpoena?
That's right. If they don't move directly to demand the birth certificate, which is just a fact-finding mission, then we know they're wanting to hold this back there to continue the blackmailing.
Exactly, because it's a very lucrative thing, and they think that they're going to get a lot more things that they want over the next 2 years. Again, that tax bill is the first attack on Social Security in terms of the old age pensions. And I think there are people, Peter Peterson and the Koch brothers and all sorts of people. And
they're selling it, just like in New Jersey, that this will fix the deficit. If you don't get rid of the debt black hole and the fractional reserve banking and the derivatives, you could cut everything. It's not going to pay anything off.
Yeah, the lesson of history is the more you cut, the bigger the deficit is in the out years when you come back in the following year. So this makes no sense. So nothing but terrible tragedy with Obama. So any hack politician, a normal hack bureaucrat politician, would be better than Obama, and there's a broad array. So let's get to the bottom of this fast. And the heat is on the Republicans now. They made big promises. Let's see what they're made of. Darrell Issa, first we want the birth certificate in the public domain, and then we want this other issue on the naturalization in Indonesia.
Yeah, and if the Republicans don't do that, notice Glenn Beck admonishes his audience almost every day, do not go after the birth certificate. Do not go after it, because they want to keep using that card. We want to play the card. We'll be right back with Phil Berg and Webster Tarpley. In closing, gentlemen, not what you want to happen, but what do you in your gut see happening with Obama? The lowest approval rating in history for a president at this point. The fastest continual dropping in history. I mean, in another year or so, this guy, I can't see him with above a 20-point approval rating. I agree with you. He's a puppet. Get him out of there so that we can, actually engage the globalists instead of them just blaming everything on their minion. In closing, Phil Berg, how do you see this ending?
Well, I've been hopeful since 2008. I think we need to spread the word. You do a terrific job on that. We have to get more and more people involved. We have to put pressure on the Republicans, on Isaac to do it, or we'll see that Clinton and others are going to try to do away. Clinton would have a lot of control, and he could do that and get him exposed. But we have to do it because it's a disaster what's going on. If we get him out of office, everything he's done is void or voidable. It's voidable, so it would be void, and we have to do it. And my website is obamacrimes.com. If they go there, they can check the latest on my lawsuit, which is going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that's a shot we have, but the courts have not been with us. They've been in the pocket of Obama, but perhaps now things will change because the powers that be may want to change, and they'll go our way. So keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you so much, Phil Berg. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a good New Year.
Thank you.
Webster, from the beginning, I thought they were building Obama up as messianic to later destroy him. I predicted that over a year and a half ago in the Obama deception, when his approval rating was still at about 70 points when that film came out, or above 70. I believe this has all been scripted. Do you have a different view of that, A, and B, how do you see it ending?
Well, it's inevitable that when Obama ran for president with all of these messianic promises, utopian delusions, the Messiah and all this, that there would be a very severe letdown, which would be much more severe than the usual disillusionment with the president when they begin to break their promises. So with Obama, this is very, very significant, because here the mistaken identity case was very severe. Now, there are two things that could happen now. One is Darrell Issa and these Republicans take their constitutional responsibilities seriously, and there's some chance that they might, and they delve into this, get that birth certificate out there. The chances are, though, as you mentioned, if Glenn Beck says stay away from the issue, that means Rupert Murdoch is saying stay away from the issue. That means the Rupert Murdoch, George Shultz, Koch brothers faction in the ruling class, they say we want 2 more years of blackmail. We want to guarantee that the Republicans have Obama to run against.
It's worse than that. Karl Rove is attacking anybody who may run against Obama and the Democrats everywhere. He wants 6 more years.
Right. So one is Darrell Issa does something that would be a surprise to me. The other one is maybe the Clintons, if they see that Obama is hemorrhaging and collapsing into the springtime and maybe into the early summer, they may then take the plunge, or somebody sent forward by them, a stalking horse for the Clintons, might emerge. Everybody talks about Russ Feingold of Wisconsin. It's an obvious choice. I would welcome it. I would welcome anybody getting in on the Democratic side. Anybody of any note would tend to break the ice and indeed show the pent-up resentment and desire to get rid of Obama that exists in the Democratic base.
Do you like Russ Feingold because he voted against the Patriot Act?
He has some signs in his resume that he's an independent thinker. And again, I don't really care who it is. Structurally, the important thing is somebody should do it. Doesn't really matter who.
Yeah, because Obama is a complete puppet. All right, Webster, have a great New Year coming up. We'll be right back with the second hour. Stay with us. Well, I really enjoyed having him in studio a few months ago with us, and I look forward to having him back in studio. But for the next 30 minutes, he joins us via telephone. He, of course, is the editor of naturalnews.com. We post a lot of their great reports at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. I want to get in the short segment into a swine flu pandemic outbreak sweeping through Britain, even though 70% were vaccinated last year. You have the Canadian studies and government studies in Europe showing that it lowers your immunity by about 50% when you take the H1N1 shot to the regular seasonal flu. Now you don't have a choice. They're combining both. And so I wanted to talk just briefly with Mike Adams about that. Then we're going to come back with the big story here. Homeland Security and U.S. Treasury are involved with the food safety bill invoking Codex, that's UN takeover, harmonization, and grants FDA authority to police food safety of foreign nations, kind of like we just discovered that the Drug Enforcement Agency is running around as a global spy agency, non-drug related. This is a global corporate government with the U.S. taxpayer fitting the bill. So that's coming up in the next segment. But let's look at flu season first. Obviously, record low numbers of people took it here last year because of your work and others exposing it as dangerous, which has now been proven by the British Medical Journal, the EU Medical Board, and others. But Mike, now they're back fear-mongering. Tell us about that.
Well, they are fear-mongering as usual, Alex. You're right on target. Even though about 70% of the over 65 population was vaccinated last year in the UK, they're already saying that there's a new pandemic sweeping through the country. Several hundred people are in hospitals now suffering from swine flu. But there's a number that they never tell you. They never say how many of those sick people were vaccinated either this year or last year, because there's something that I call the reinfection rate. And it's a very high number. We don't know how high it is because they won't release the number. They won't do the studies on this. But people who are vaccinated have a weakened immune system when they face future exposure to infectious disease. So I'm sure your listeners are on board with this. They're well informed. They already know this. But the mainstream conventional medical community denies this. They try to imply that if you're vaccinated, it's 100%. You know, you take the shot, you won't get sick. Well, that's a fraud. In fact, it's marketing fraud. If the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually enforced, false marketing regulations against the drug companies, they would go after them for making those claims because vaccines don't work 100%. In fact, if you look at the science, and I've written about it, and you have too, they're about 1% effective if you believe the drug companies' own studies. So for every 100 people who are vaccinated, you're going to reduce flu symptoms in about one person.
But that's on the benefit end when you look at the negative effects, as you know, but for those that don't, every major study out there shows vaccines lower overall immunity, including to the things that they're supposedly protecting you from. And the anecdotal on the street is it's common knowledge that I took the flu shot and got the flu. I mean, it's common sense.
Well, exactly. There are dangerous chemicals in these vaccines. There are chemical adjuvants, which are designed to cause an inflammation response of the immune system, but it also causes inflammation of the nervous system. So it's linked to all kinds of nervous system problems. And now here's the big untold story about vaccines is the miscarriages. Women who are getting vaccinated when they have a child.
And that's in the Australian news. Stay there. I want you to recap that, get into the miscarriages. The Australian government's been admitting it. They're trying to cover it up here. The British government admits a 10-fold increase in seizures in children taking it, and they suspended it. Then the government and the media and these pharmacies put out fact sheets they print up saying, no danger. But then if you ask for the actual insert, it says this stuff can kill you. We'll be right back with Mike Adams. Stay with us. Going back to Mike Adams, one of the leading alternative health experts out there, very respected. Recapping what you were covering with the 2010 flu hoax, maybe we should briefly look at the 2009, and then that miscarriage information. We're trying to save some lives here. Then we'll shift gears into the UN angle of the food enslavement bill.
Sure. Well, you got to realize that the drug companies, the vaccine manufacturers, they have to fabricate an emergency every year in order to try to get people to take these shots. And so this year, that has failed for the most part. People were not getting vaccinated. People learned their lesson from last year, the big swine flu hoax crashed and burned. And also people who didn't take the shot, who instead took vitamin D and who took superfoods like your sponsor, Enerfood, and other good foods out there, and who took care of their health, they were fine. They didn't get sick. And a lot of them woke up and they realized, we don't need the vaccines. We're going to be healthier without it. So now, because their propaganda is failing, they have to push it. And that's what they're doing now in the UK. They're pushing it. There are a couple hundred people in the hospitals who are suffering from swine flu, and they're saying everybody needs to get vaccinated. Now they're saying we're going to revisit the vaccinations for children under 5 years old because they pulled those vaccines previously for children under 5 in their National Health Service because of the potential risks. But now they're saying, well, because of this pandemic breaking out, we got to vaccinate all those kids. And in the U.S., as you hinted, they're now saying we got to vaccinate pregnant women, too, so that their children can be, quote, protected. And by the way, I also saw an article recently saying that they're promoting chemotherapy for pregnant women, saying it's safe to have chemo even when you have a child inside you. This is medical insanity. I mean, how many?
Well, they're setting the precedent. They're setting the precedent to get away with mass murder, and they know what they're doing. They're turning health purely into a death camp, a eugenics camp, as Ted Turner and Bill Gates have admitted. I mean, they mean business. And for those that don't know, I remember just a few years ago, it always said in the inserts, and I've had medical doctors on that have pointed this out, that you never give a pregnant woman a vaccine because they know it causes autoimmune inflammation, not just in the brain, but in the fetus, and triggers massive increases in miscarriages. This time they said women who have babies in their uterus, you're the one that really needs this. I mean, what an outrageous thing they did. And I've seen it. The only country to be admitting it is Australia, where they're admitting this is causing the death of babies.
Well, what's astonishing in all this, if you look across the government bureaucracy, and you had Rand Paul on a couple of weeks ago talking about how these bureaucrats create laws themselves, essentially by creating regulations. They're unelected, but they create regulations like the FDA and the TSA and the DEA and so on. These government bodies, they just blatantly lie. They don't even care about telling the truth. They don't even care if they're caught in a lie. They just keep lying because most people keep buying it. So they throw out the evidence of harm for vaccines. You know, the TSA tries to dismiss any of these complaints about, you know, people reaching down their pants and so on. They say, oh, it's for your own good. I mean, you've been all over that issue, so you know what I'm talking about. But every agency now is just running rampant across our freedoms and across the Constitution. And now with the food safety bill, which I know we're going to talk about here, our food is at risk. They want to control our food. They want to reach into our refrigerators the same way the TSA has been reaching down our pants. That's what's happened. That's what's coming our way now in 2011.
Incredible. Let's get into the Homeland Security tie-in. It was admitted, even in the Wall Street Journal, a record $12 million given in the month of November to get the House to pass the draconian takeover. The $12 million was given completely by mega agribusiness to shut down their competitions. Let's go over it.
All right. Well, let's set the frame here for your listeners. The bill proponents said that this is all about food safety. We're going to save 5,000 lives a year. You know, the FDA is a good agency. It's going to protect your food and protect your children and so on. Well, what they didn't tell you is, for example, did you know that E. coli, according to the CDC itself, only kills about 82 Americans a year through food transmission? 82 people. More people are killed by lightning in America than are killed by E. coli. And yet they made this into a big scare story. And that's a CDC statistic, by the way. You can see it right on the government website. And then they hid things in the bill, things that are just now starting to come out. I've been reading this bill, Alex, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, because you know how crazy these bills can get where you have to reference this section and delete that phrase from that paragraph. They're really hard to read. But if you get to this and you actually read it, it turns out that this bill says that the FDA has to put forth, quote, recommendations on whether and how to harmonize requirements under Codex Alimentarius.
It's right there. The open world government standardization. This is, well, I mean, when you see the food safety bill, it's what's in Codex Alimentarius. It's global standardization. Now they're not even denying that. They're openly trying to bring us under this world government to shut down local farms and ranches because people are discovering that we're being poisoned intentionally through the GMO. People are getting the Rockefeller Foundation documents about vaccines having sterilants added. It's all coming out. And as the UN said in the 1996 Food Summit in Beijing, China, they would use food as a weapon. They are using it as a weapon. So it is our duty to start eating non-GMO. It's our duty to start gardens. It's our duty, even if they pass this, to literally rebel. And they're setting up the SWAT teams, everything. They're SWAT teaming the Amish to grow those tomatoes and then let them try to arrest you and further discredit these hordes of demons they've recruited.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most patriotic thing that you could do, perhaps, right now, is to grow your own food and sell it at a local farmer's market. Sell it to your neighbors. Sell it to your community members. You know, grow some honest tomatoes and just sell them. And this is what the government precisely doesn't want you to do. And that's why they've created all of this dark globalist language in this bill. Let me give you some other examples.
Well, stay there. We're going to come back and hit this. We've got to go to break. But think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 1930s, Stalin couldn't crush the poor farmers. He wanted to collectivize them, like Mao later did and killed 60-plus million people. So he said you can't grow your own gardens anymore and starved 30-plus million people to death. I mean, they're not playing games. These are hardcore criminals. We'll be right back. All right, going back to Mike Adams. Only got about 5 minutes left with him right now. Mike, continuing, I mean, you've got quoted in your article. It's up at naturalnews.com. It's up at InfoWars and Prison Planet. People want to read it. Food safety bill invokes Codex harmonization and grants FDA authority to police food safety for foreign nations. I mean, this is the global government right here, and they mention it's Codex Alimentarius. Tell folks what Section 308 really means.
Okay, well, first of all, for those who are skeptical, and, you know, I encourage people to be critical thinkers, and they want to see this for themselves. if you go to the Thomas government search engine where you can search bills, you put in HR 2751 because that's what this was passed under, and you bring up this PDF file, go to page 195. You'll see this language for yourself. And you'll also see Section 308. It's called the Foreign Offices of the Food and Drug Administration. Yes, we're not kidding. The FDA is going to set up enforcement offices in other nations, other countries, and they're going to dictate to these countries how they should run their food safety systems so that when they export food to the United States, it adheres to, quote, FDA standards, which, by the way, means that all your food should be dead, pasteurized, fumigated, or otherwise killed or nutritively destroyed. To the FDA, the only safe food is dead food.
Well, and they openly tell local farmers, get big or get out. We know they forced the Iraqis to only take Monsanto GMO crops. I mean, this is a strategic military takeover.
Well, yeah, and additional evidence came out in the WikiLeaks cables, which shows that Spain was involved with the U.S. ambassador to France and the GMO companies pushing GMOs into Europe, and they were creating a, quote, retaliatory target list of who to go after if they resisted GMOs. I mean, this is all in the cables. So we know there is a GMO global conspiracy, and it's not a theory. It's a real conspiracy that's happening right now. And now with this food safety bill, we know that the FDA is going to try to run the food safety programs of other nations and try to harmonize America with Codex. This is coming. You know, we've been talking about this for how many years, Alex? And it's coming now. It is now about to be signed by Obama and become law and be enforced.
Absolutely. Continue. This is important what you're talking about.
All right. Well, it also involves the Department of Homeland Security. This language is right in the bill. It says that in developing this plan, the FDA is going to consult with these different departments, which they call stakeholders. The stakeholders in the food safety bill include the Department of Homeland Security and, get this, the U.S. Treasury. What is the Treasury doing in my kitchen? Why does it have its hands in the food supply issues? Well, you already know the answer, and I think your listeners probably do too. But the people voting on this bill, you know, the naive senators and members of the House who voted for this, they probably don't get it, or most of them don't, that this is all tied in with centralizing control over security, control over the money supply, control over the food supply, and control over your health or actually your sick care. So once they've got the control, then you don't have options. You don't have an option to go grow your own medicine in your backyard because you can grow medicine. You know, natural herbal medicine and superfoods, you can grow them in your backyard. They don't want you to do that because that way you are a slave to the medical system where you have to go pay money for prescriptions and you have to keep paying month after month, year after year until you one day die bankrupt as another victim of Big Pharma. They have these systems of control. The grasp is getting worse, and thank goodness that there are still freedom fighters out there like you, Alex, like the health freedom organizations out there who are trying to stand up, who are doing a good job, actually, of standing up and bringing attention to this issue and helping us lead the fight to resist tyranny and restore the freedoms that we are supposed to be guaranteed under the United States Constitution.
Mike, I couldn't say it any more focused or succinctly than that. And, you know, in closing, I just over the years see the mainstream media make fun of us about Codex Alimentarius when all we're doing is covering what the private corporations and the UN and the World Trade Organization are announcing. And then now here it is in the bill, and there's no discussion of it. Thank God you found it in there. It's always changing.
Well, just like you say, they're hiding it in plain sight. You know, I hear you use that phrase quite a bit. You're exactly right. They hide it in plain sight. They put it right in there. It's a government record. That's a certified government document. If you open up that PDF, it's a certified government document. The language is right in there. Use the search function yourself. You can see it. You can read it. And you can bet the FDA is going to act on it. They're going to push this agenda. It's now about to become law. This is happening today.
Amazing. Mike Adams from naturalnews.com. He also authorizes us to post the wonderful material from that at Infowars.com. We love the great work he's doing. Mike, I look forward to having you back in studio soon.
Thank you, Alex. Always great to join you. Take care.
Great having you on. We'll be right back. Tony Zambodi, a mechanical engineer and part of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, now with over 1,200 members worldwide, as our guest, along with somebody else who really doesn't need any introduction. He's been a guest on this broadcast before. He's a great lover of liberty, former American football offensive lineman in the National Football League. Mark Stepnoski, career in the NFL, spent with the Dallas Cowboys, where he won, 2 Super Bowls, and, of course, 5-time Pro Bowler. Doesn't get any better than that, and it's great having Mark with us. But I tell you, not only did I grow up in Dallas and a fan of the Dallas Cowboys growing up, I have to admit now that all I do is fight the globalist. I can't even really enjoy a football game anymore. All I think about is this stuff. But I'm even a bigger fan of Mark, not just for his determination on the football field, but how that same spirit translates into standing up many years ago when it wasn't as popular to talk about 9/11 truth. But he saw the evidence, he did it. And the same thing goes for our engineer friend, Mr. Zambodi. Now, they're going to make a big announcement here today. Mark Stepnoski stepping up to the plate yet again. I'm honored that 5-6 months ago, they launched the Buildingwhat campaign here on this show. And my listeners donated the lion's share of the original money to put the Buildingwhat campaign, dealing with Building 7 that nobody knows about, on New York TV. Since then, it's been covered by hundreds of newspapers, dozens and dozens of international TV networks. Geraldo Rivera has now had Mr. Zambodi and also one of the fathers of someone who died on his show, and said that now he sees that 9/11 truth, Bob McIlvaney, that now this should be investigated, and that he's suspicious of Building 7. But even more, and this was covered by CNN even, this was covered by George Soros' people attacking this show and attacking him and calling for his firing. Judge Andrew Napolitano, the co-host of Glenn Beck on his TV show, the guy with his own show on Fox Business with Lou Dobbs, came on this show without my prompting a month ago and said the official story of 9/11 is impossible and that it should be seen as the JFK assassination as a fraud. And the system has come after him, and you notice he hadn't been fired because this is becoming the mainstream view. We have major polls like the New York Times, Angus and Reid, where 83% don't believe the official story. Kennedy assassination polls are upwards of 90% believe the official story is a lie. And it's because of people's courage, like Andres von Bülow, the former head of German defense, coming out and saying it was an inside job. The former Italian president coming out. The number 3 in the Japanese government coming out on this show saying inside job. Because of so many family members and prominent people and emergency first responders and police officers that survived, the evidence is coming out. 6 of the 10 9/11 Commission are saying it's all a lie and a fraud. Mr. Farmer, the head lawyer, saying it's a, quote, criminal cover-up by the Pentagon. Ventura coming out, his show. I mean, and believe me, they've gone through a lot of harassment and intimidation over that. Homeland Security is trying to shut the show down. You heard Ventura 2 weeks ago break the news here that they have banned the police state episode. I mean, this is a big issue. And it's about honor. It's about courage. And so, Mark Stepnoski, do you want to make the announcement here on the show today of what you've announced you're going to do this week?
Certainly, yeah. I've pledged $10,000 to this second round of the Buildingwhat campaign in order to pay to have these commercials appear on the air again in New York City. So, hopefully your listeners will respond like they did before and be willing to put a little bit of their money into the pot and try to do what corporate television won't do, and that's show this building collapse on TV so that people can get a look at it, some of them for the first time, and maybe it'll affect their judgment about what happened that day.
Now, Mark, and then I want to get Tony's take on this. For those that don't know, because we're on so many M and FM stations, there's new folks tuning into this for the first time right now. What does the Buildingwhat campaign deal with? Why is it called Buildingwhat?
Deals solely with Building 7, the third tower. They collapsed on 9/11 at about 5:20 in the afternoon. The people responsible for this campaign and for getting these television commercials on the air is NYC CAN, New York City Coalition for Accountability Now. They attempted a couple years ago to have this issue considered by the City Council of New York. They wanted to present this issue, have witnesses, and somehow spur a separate investigation by City Council in New York. And during that time period, when one of the members of NYC CAN mentioned Building 7 while addressing the judge for the city, his comment was building what? Because like many people, apparently he wasn't familiar with that building or the fact that it collapsed that day. So that kind of, in a nutshell, crystallizes public opinion about this issue and the lack of information and the lack of awareness about what happened to Building 7. So that is how it became the name of the campaign.
Well, it's beautiful, and we're going to give folks the URL out in a moment to the Buildingwhat website. We're also going to play the original ad. But, Mark, I'm telling you, this campaign was a lot more successful than I even thought it would be. When I asked my listeners, you know, if they believed in it to donate to it up front with that original seed money, and then others joined in, I wasn't sure it would have any effect at all, but I knew that laying down would certainly be ineffective. I mean, what's the old saying that winners never quit and quitters never win, or you can say it the other way, that that quitters never win and winners never quit. But certainly now it's caused a chain reaction. BBC, RT, Al Jazeera, Fox, CNN, and it clearly spurred courage for Geraldo Rivera. I won't play it again because of time constraints, but he said, wow, I've now met with a family who lost their son. These engineers, Building 7, very suspicious. This needs to be looked into. I'm suspicious. This is legitimate. And then Napolitano on Fox, of all places, to step up with even more courage, and now they've tried to get him fired. We need to stand with him. I mean, this isn't a game here, but I'm really very surprised and very happy at just how effective the Buildingwhat campaign has been. So I want to salute everybody involved with it, and, of course, you, Mark, and Mr. Zamboni and everybody else, because we're having an effect here, and the system's got to be scared. Mark, what's your take on that?
Well, I agree. I think the people at NYC CAN deserve a lot of credit. You know, they have worked hard on this issue for years. They have refused to let this issue die. That has mainly come about as a result of the dedication of not only the family members, the remaining family members who are involved with NYC CAN, but all the other institutions and all the other groups of people that are involved. The firefighters, the pilots, like you mentioned, the architects and the engineers, former military and intelligence people. There's a whole lot of credibility behind this movement, and it's not, you know, you have all the different areas represented. You have people whose family members were involved. You have people whose background involves expertise in these areas. Everyone who has reason to be skeptical has joined forces in this group to come together to kind of pierce the censorship bubble that has existed around, you know, the collapse of Building 7. As you mentioned earlier, internationally now, for several years, there has been quite a bit of skepticism about the official story of 9/11, and there have been people around the world in leadership positions who have spoken out and have expressed their skepticism. I think, fortunately, what this campaign has done here in New York has kind of enabled that to happen to a certain extent in America. Because of the media blackout regarding some of the truths of September 11th, I think the public and certainly some politicians have been slow to react compared to what's going on in other countries. But fortunately, it looks like thus far these commercials have served as an impetus to get people to kind of shrug off their apathy and address this issue and look at it with new eyes, so to speak, and hopefully try to do something about it.
So it's almost like some big offensive linemen breaking open a hole so that the truth, that running back can run right through and get a touchdown.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you have the truth on your side, it's only a question of time before it comes out. I mean, if you have dedicated people who feel strongly about this issue, who are not going to go away, they have, like I said, for many reasons, a lot of the people involved behind this campaign have a lot of incentive to see it succeed. And fortunately, all that dedication and years of hard work is yielding some results right now, which is very encouraging. And that's why I continue to be involved, because, you know, in light of the effect that this has had, everybody who is part of it would certainly like to see it continue.
Well, we're going to come back with Mark Stepnoski and, of course, mechanical engineer Tony Zambodi. Just absolutely amazing. We'll also look back at Building 7 and why it's so important, and the key to exposing the cover-up and the fraud that is 9/11, and how 9/11's now been used for the naked body scanners, the threat fusion centers, the police state, all these illegal wars, and where the Building What campaign is going next. But it's had a huge effect, and we've never been making this much progress for 9/11 truth. The system is really scared. We'll also talk to Mark and Tony about why they had the courage to go public. You know, why they're doing it. I mean, I know why deep down. I can answer their question for them, because they can't stand corruption. They can't stand lies. They have a sense of justice. We'll discuss it all with these patriots on the other side. Stay with us. And hey, we've had Bellamy and Muse on. He's a patriot. Only news links on the Muse website. Infowars.com, prisonplanet.com. I'm not bragging. I'm saying look at the effect. How many other great people of courage are stepping up and standing out. Matt Bellamy at concerts has talked about Inside Job, worn Terror Storm T-shirts promoting my film. As more and more prominent people, Willie Nelson, the list goes on, stand up with courage, it's over for the system. It's over. And more people can now have courage standing on the shoulders of people like Mark Stepnoski. Again, two-time Super Bowl winner, 5-time Pro Bowler, NFL, Cowboys center. We've also got Tony Zambodi, mechanical engineer, part of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, waking up Geraldo Rivera, chain reaction into Judge Knapp. Very exciting. In this brief segment, we're going to hold you guys throughout the hour, and I appreciate your time. I want to play the Building What ad, give out the website. It's buildingwhat.org. Running through to the end of the year, the next 3 days, today, Thursday, and Friday, he's given $10,000, and he hopes to match those that give $10,000. I'm told our listeners gave about 30 the first time we did this. That sounds like a lot. It's not. But those few ads in New York, because the ad's effective, had a big effect. I want to ask you this first, Tony, before we go come back to Mark Stepnoski. What made you as an engineer start questioning, and what's your whole view of 9/11?
Well, I watched the towers come down live at work. We were in a design review when we heard that there was a first and then a second plane hit. And at break time, of course, went up to the cafeteria. And, most big companies have TVs in the cafeterias. We're watching the towers while they're burning. And, next thing you know, one comes down, South Tower, and then a half hour later, the North Tower. And I was shaking my head, wondering where all the energy came from. I'm not saying I was suspicious. It just didn't seem right. And coming home from work that night, I heard about Building 7. And that just perplexed me. I'm thinking it had to be right up next to the towers, been completely gutted. They said there was diesel fires in it they couldn't put out. It just didn't seem right. Knowing they described the size of the building. And in case anybody doesn't know, most people should know, but they really need to think about it. And I use football field, Mark, as an analogy here. Imagine being on a football field. That's how big that building was in plan, in the area. Each floor was a football field in size. And you would have a large column every 5 yards on the perimeter. Then you'd have the same size columns from the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line, and then 3 abreast, another 24 in the middle. And imagine that thing coming down at free fall acceleration for 105 feet. This thing was 610 foot tall.
Unbelievable.
It's immense. I don't think people really fully appreciate it when they see the film, the immensity of this building.
In most cities, it'd be the biggest. I mean, in Austin, it'd be the biggest. It'd be the second biggest building in Dallas.
Well, they're saying in 33 states it would be the biggest building. Okay, but it's not just the height, Alex. It's the immensity, the size, a football field in width and length, and then 610 foot tall. That's a humongous building. It's absolutely immense, and for that to come down at free fall acceleration. It went over a cliff, and it's not moving, and all of a sudden, boom, it goes into free fall acceleration. That's impossible.
And by the way, NIST had denied for 9 years, or 8.5 years at the time, that there was free fall. Now they've had to admit there was free fall, because under Newtonian physics, as you know as an engineer, it's impossible unless they blew it.
That's right. They played a couple games. First of all, they only measured 2 points. They took an average. And David Chandler, a physicist from California, forced them to admit the free fall, which they admit to as part of it. They have this 5.4 seconds that they say their model comes down, and it comes down to the 29th floor. The first 18 stories you can see, and then it's cut off in the view because of a building in front of it. But they say that first 18 floors came down in 5.4 seconds, but in reality, it was 3.9. So they were 40% over, and they did that because that's all they could get their model to come down in. So their model doesn't replicate the failure. Their model never goes into free fall. So, it was whether it was an attempt at subterfuge or not, it was incorrect, and they did not replicate the failure. And if anybody that's seen, and they can see the NIST model on the Buildingwhat.org website, their model doesn't look like what you see in the video at all. There's tremendous deformation of the building at the top. All
right, Tony, stay there. Mark, stay there. We're going to come right back, play the Buildingwhat ad, ask folks to donate, get into a lot more. Stay with us. A lot of people early on, when I was talking about 9/11 and how they were planning to blow up the World Trade Centers 2 months before it happened, and then on the day that it happened, when I was talking about the controlled demolition, they said it's so rude. The truth isn't rude. The truth is the truth. Buying into a fable that is then used to destroy our republic and our freedoms and have an iron curtain of tyranny lower down over the planet, that is not something that's obviously good for society. Only the truth will set us free. And the truth is there are many governments, the Russians, our own, that it's been declassified, of staged terror attacks. And regardless of who you think was really behind it, we know the official story is a lie, is a fraud. And if we don't expose this fraud, then the system is going to continue to use it to bring in a new dark age of control. Talking to Mark Stepnoski. Mark, when did you first start? I think I first interviewed you like 4 or 5 years ago, but when did you first start to question the official fable of 9/11, and why did you decide, a guy who'd made tens of millions of dollars, very successful in business, great family, what made you decide to take that plunge and do something that you knew that you could be attacked for?
I was skeptical of events the day it happened. And I don't say that, to try and sound like a know-it-all in retrospect, but I say that because leading up to that point, throughout my life, I had read a lot about the Kennedy assassination and the Iran-Contra affair and the Murrah building blowing up in Oklahoma City. I had read a lot about those historical events throughout my life, and had studied them and kind of became aware of the inconsistencies in all those stories and how what the truth was not something that was highlighted in corporate media. So as I watched the events unfold that day in 2001, I felt much the way Tony did, although admittedly I am no expert and don't claim to be. But just watching that second tower go down that day, looking at the television, I said to myself, that doesn't look like that's from any kind of fire. Just even myself, a lay person, right, a professional football player at the time, just logic could tell you by watching that on TV that was an explosion. That was a building disintegrating into powder in front of your eyes. That was obviously not from a fire. So my thinking was just to wait and see if that this system would correct this issue. As time went on, and you'd like to think that any kind of structures within government that are built to, detect and ferret out corruption and bring people to justice, you'd like to see those mechanisms go into effect. And it appeared to be that way when the 9/11 Commission was first put together, although it was obvious with how long it took and how little money was given to it that it was never really a serious attempt to get to the bottom of things. And then once the commission was finished and the former members spoke out, that view was cemented, and everybody realized that it was just a cover-up. So honestly, it's just, having the misgivings that I originally had and knowing what I knew about previous events where the public was not told the truth, it got to the point where it became apparent that, certain mechanisms were not going to kick in, and the system was not going to correct itself. It became obvious that this corruption was going to go unpunished, and that, as you said, this event was going to be used as a pretext for a whole agenda that was put in place, prior to September 11, 2001. So I just reached the point where, like many other concerned citizens who have donated far more time and effort than I have, after researching the event, reading about it online or in books, or going to see people give presentations, speakers who, don't believe in the official story, all this kind of added up to me just wanting to do something about it myself, just as any concerned citizen would do. If you're somewhere, you want your voice to be heard, you want to believe that you live in some semblance of a democracy, it was just a case of putting my money where my mouth is.
Well, if you see something, say something, but it's like this airline pilot sees that the airports are wide open for everybody but the pilots and passengers. He puts out a video. They raid his house. Now there's going to be a congressional investigation. Now the feds are backing off the pilot's courage. We learn they only want us not trusting each other and spying on each other. They don't want us seeing buildings blown up in front of us to use our own common sense. But to use the football analogy, which I use a lot, not just when I have a two-time Super Bowl champ on with me, I can clearly say now that they were winning 9 years ago. About 3 years ago, we began to fight back and started to turn the tide. But I have to say, 9/11 Truth wasn't winning until about the last year or so. And now this Buildingwhat.org campaign, I think, has really been a game changer, Mark. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's had a definite impact, and that's the reason why the people involved chose to continue, because they could see that the effect that it was having, they were certainly getting bang for their buck, and they were accomplishing what they originally set out to do, which was to have this demolition shown on TV. I believe on the day of September 11th, it was shown once and never shown again. So it's just a case of getting it out there and educating the public. People who have not seen this building go down, some who are not even aware of it, can now look back on it with a different perspective, with maybe a little bit less emotion clouding their judgment. Now that they're a little bit removed from that day and can respond and view something more with logic and less with just gut reaction, maybe people will be a little bit more willing to open their eyes.
Well, here's the $64 million question. I want to throw it to you, Mark, and then, of course, to the engineer, Tony, who's here with us. But not just their overall agenda of global militarism and takeover that they've gotten through this staged event that Operation Northwoods previously discussed, where the Pentagon lays out why they want to stage big attacks on the homeland to be blamed on foreign enemies. If we don't expose the favorite tool of tyrants, false flag terror, that Hitler used in 1933 to really become a dictator, firebombing his own Reichstag. If we don't expose this, the system's going to do more in the future. I mean, they're not going to stop unless we break their stranglehold on this issue.
Well, that's true. I mean, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you have people who, they have the military hegemony, that the U.S. has now throughout the world, when you have ownership of the corporate media and you can control the message and censor any information that might come out, then that's what you will get. You will have democracy being subverted. It is up to people like those in New York, in NYC Can, and all the groups, like I said, firefighters, pilots, architects, and engineers from 9/11 Truth. It is up to those people to be involved in truly what is a citizens movement. I'm proud to be involved because it's a grassroots movement. I empathize with the people that had family members die that day. That could have been any one of us. Those people were just victims of circumstance, and now their family members are left with a bunch of unanswered questions. That could be any one of us. If any one of us was in that situation, we would be doing the same thing. Some people were, in a sense, bought off by the settlement money that was paid out to the remaining family members. But there's a small percentage that was not, that continued to fight and to push this issue because they don't want to let it go because they know that they're being lied to. So it's just, like I said, I'm happy to be a part of it. And, sometimes I get the attitude from people that, hey, he's just an ex-football player. What does he know? And I tell people, fine, don't believe me, don't listen to me, because there are people far more educated in this area than I am who have every bit as much, if not more, skepticism than I do. If you don't want to believe me just because I'm a guy that used to play football, that's fine.
Yeah, what about the former German defense minister, the former head of German intelligence, the former Italian president? What about all these thousands of architects and engineers? What about all the police and firemen I've talked to and medics who heard the Building 7 countdown? What about the police on video saying, get back, they're going to blow up 7? It's all right there in front of us. And then you get into all of the other evidence. That's why this Building What campaign is so important. Buildingwhat.org. We've got it up on screen for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. But before we go back to that, I want to play the original Building What ad. And this all started because they were trying to go to the city of New York to have a ballot initiative for a new investigation. They're at the city level of 9/11, and their petitions got thrown out. And the judge said, Building What, when they brought up Building 7. So that was the genesis of the Building What campaign. Here is the public service announcement with family members of 9/11 victims. Here it is.
I lost my son,
my nephew,
my uncle,
my son
on September 11th, 2001.
Most people don't know that a third tower fell on September 11th.
World Trade Center 7, a 47-story skyscraper, was not hit by a plane.
Although the official explanation is that fire brought down Building 7.
Over 1,200 architects and engineers have looked into the evidence
and believe there is more to the story.
Bring justice to my son,
my uncle,
my nephew,
my son,
and thousands of others who died on September 11th.
Go to buildingwhat.org.
Buildingwhat.org, and Mark Stepnoski is going to give $10,000 to this. He hopes that you will match him. I know that I'm going to give a donation today, and again, I get nothing from this except the truth and a future for my children. Mark doesn't. All of this is going for these TV ads. I hope you will give generously because we have seen a huge effect, because this is very effective. At first, it shows Building 7 falling, something most people haven't seen. The media never wanted to cover it then or afterwards. You never hear about Building 7 in the media. But it also shows victims. Now, I've had some of the heads of the biggest 9/11 victims' families on the show. I'll get them on about other issues with 9/11. And in every case, I say, what percentage of your group believe it's an inside job? And they say more than half. And I've been on the streets and had firemen and police shake my hand, the majority of them. I've had commanders salute me when I've been down there. The cops know, the firemen know, they know. They're not stupid. They know that they were told the air was safe to breathe, and internally the EPA knew how deadly it was. They've been fighting for 9 years to block health care for the people down there. It's incredible. Going back to the mechanical engineer, Tony Zambodi. Tony, other points you want to add or that you want to put out here today for listeners?
Well, I just wanted to say, I wanted to repeat what I said on Gerardo's show, that there's an absolute proof. I tend to try to follow, and I think what the Building What campaign is doing is, the KISS principle, keep it simple. absolutely impossible, I can't stress that enough, for that building to go in the free fall acceleration in a natural way. For 8 stories, 8 13-foot tall stories, or 105 feet. Because when columns, in a natural collapse, columns would have to buckle. And when columns buckle, there's a minimum resistance. It's what we call asymptotic. You guys probably saw this in school. It's when the curve comes down and never drops down to the x-axis in an XY graph. And in this case, the buckling resistance is significant. It's not even near zero. It's 10 to 25% of the intact strength. So what I want to say there, it's not just 10 to 25% of the resistance because you have a factor of safety. The columns in Building 7 were anywhere from 3 to 5 was the factor of safety. In other words, they could support a load above them that was 300 to 500% greater than what they actually had on them. So when I say it retained 10 to 25% of its intact strength, that means even if they were buckling, completely scissored, folded, they could still support a load that was 30 to 75% of the load that was on them. That means it can never go to free fall. It's completely impossible.
So let's say one level did buckle. It wouldn't have been symmetrical, A. B, you would have had it collapsing in chunks. It would have taken time for each floor to collapse. And there's another area that I know you can quantify. I forget the exact term they use. But the pile was too short. These things had been blown in to manageable sections, just like a controlled demolition.
Well,
you didn't have a...
Yeah. Right. A lot of people say that. What NIST tries to say is that they had an internal failure on the east side. The east penthouse went down, and that internal collapse progressed from east to west completely. And then all of a sudden, the entire exterior shell, which was standing on its own prior to that, comes down in free fall. Well, that's impossible because they try to say, Alex, that it's a multi-story buckle. That's very, very unlikely to have happened with that complete sheet because those column connections on the outside columns were moment resisting. The whole face is not going to buckle. And in addition to that, well, if the east side was coming down inside and the outside and the whole thing came down, why wouldn't the east side perimeter come down before the west side? Why wait till the whole building, the whole interior was down before the whole building to come down? That's not what happened. What really happened, that east penthouse came down a little. That was dropped for some reason. But then the whole interior was dropped just a split second. And you watch the top, the HVAC area, the parapet up on top, the heat exchangers, that area just dips in the middle. That's a little past the middle of the building. Then the whole exterior drops. It goes into a sudden collapse.
Well, sir, from structural engineers I've talked to, and then I've seen the Las Vegas implosions, with that design of a building, you want to blow the central columns first so that when you blow the others, it doesn't fall out and damage other buildings.
That's right. You want to leave it with the center so it drags in. It just puts a little force on the outside, pulls it inward a little bit so that everything comes down with a little bit of an inward pull and then comes straight down. That's exactly why it's done. What you just said is exactly why.
Beautiful job. Beautiful job.
It would have been, it was, in fact, the largest classical or traditional controlled demolition in history, Building 7.
Yeah, I mean, it was a masterpiece. They tried to blow up the Intel building here in Austin. It was a modern building they never finished because Intel had financial problems. They built it in '99, blew it up just a few years ago, and they failed. Mark, I mean, again, it's hidden in plain view, Mark.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to something that Tony said about just keeping it simple. There's never been a building collapse due to fire, ever. You know, when you look at what NIST is trying to say and you know, everything else, they're trying to get people to accept an impossibility. It's physically impossible. You know, Tony can back me up on this, I'm sure, with a much more educated opinion, but diesel fires that were burning in Building 7 are carbon-based fires. And carbon-based fires cannot get hot enough to melt steel. It's physically impossible.
You're absolutely right. Mark, stay there. Final segment. Man, this hour has gone fast. Folks, be part of this history-making event. Join the team for liberty and the truth. Donate at buildingwhat.org. I'm Alex Jones at Infowars.com. We'll be back with Mark Stepnoski and others. We've had so many guests on today. Coming up when we go into retransmission, it's Webster Tarpley, Phil Berg, Mike Adams, Porter Stansbury, Mark Stepnoski, and Tony Zambodi, engineer. You got cut off by the break. You had another point you wanted to make, Mark, about the magic bullet.
Well, yeah, just as far as, being told to believe a physical impossibility, the linchpin, I'm glad you brought up the Kennedy assassination, because the linchpin of that argument is the magic bullet theory. And that's an absurd theory. A bullet cannot behave the way that bullet was described to behave. So, if you're going to believe the official story of the Kennedy assassination, you're asked to believe a physical impossibility. And the same thing holds true for Building 7 and 9/11 in general. A steel building has never collapsed from fire. If you go online, you can see examples of other buildings in different countries throughout the world that have burned for hours and hours and not come down. That's why they build buildings out of steel. That's why your fireplace is made out of steel, because you put wood in there. Wood is a carbon-based fire, and it can't get hot enough to burn steel. So to be told that this building just got hot enough from, diesel fires and collapsed, it is a modern-day magic bullet theory. It's like the magic building theory.
Ooh, I love that, the magic building theory.
Asked to believe that this thing came down, but in reality, whether it's jet fuel or wood or anything that was burning in that building, diesel, fuel, that's a carbon-based fire, and it cannot get hot enough to melt steel. It's just impossible.
Let me back you up on that a minute, Mark, for a second, if you would. The reason a lot of people say, when you tell people fire can't melt steel, a lot of people don't understand why. And there's scientifically, I just want to say real quick why. You can melt steel in a blast furnace, but that's because you have pure oxygen. A pure oxygen environment allows you to get to 3,000 degrees centigrade. But the byproducts are carbon, it's water, I think the carbon dioxide molecule, or monoxide. You're only heating up 2 additional molecules, which takes energy if you have to heat them up. In air, you have 1/3 of the oxygen you would normally have, or a little less, actually. And then you also have to heat up several molecules of nitrogen when you have a fire, a diffuse flame.
Yeah, but everybody knows their stove doesn't melt when they cook stuff, and those flames are blue.
I'm just trying to explain why you can only get to 1,000 degrees centigrade or 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, because you don't have as much oxygen, and you have to heat up these other molecules, and it's 3 times more. And that's why you can only get 1/3 of the temperature outside of a blast furnace. And that's why you can't melt steel, because it doesn't start to melt till about 28 degrees, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1,500 centigrade. And you can't get hotter than 1,000 degrees centigrade or 1,800 Fahrenheit with any hydrocarbon fire.
Tony, I hate to interrupt you. We're going to have to do, I guess, 5 minutes of overdrive. I'll let you both go at 5 after. We're about to end the official show, but most stations carry this next hour. But I'm only going to do 5 minutes into overdrive like I did yesterday. Because I do want to spend some time, but I want you to be able to go back, both of you, on the science of this in the next little segment. But now I just want to give the website out. It's buildingwhat.org. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, Tony. Is there a phone number for folks that can't give online?
I don't know of one right off, Alex. I can find that out.
Well, there's probably one on the website. I should have asked you that before both of you guys came on. But Mark Stepnoski and Tony Zambodi, can both of you stay 5 more minutes?
Sure. Okay,
fantastic, because I don't want to cut you off in the middle of your science. And I want to be able to also ask Mark about his view of the TSA, because that's all a extension of 9/11. And then I asked him if he knew about Matalib and the staged event, and of course he did. So informed. Back in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Final segment straight ahead. Mark Stepnoski, 2-time Super Bowl champ, and of course 5-time Pro Bowler, but what he's really known for in my book is having a lot of courage. Just as an aside, we have been contacted over the last 5-6 years by countless former and current NFL stars, mainly NFL for some reason, a few basketball players, and they always want to talk to me off air, and I'm a busy guy. I'm not a hot shot or big shot, but I'm busy. But I've called a few, and they just want to thank me and buy a bunch of videos and, sometimes donate, but they're scared. And these are big NFL, tough guys that I'd be, scared of in an alley. but they don't have the moral courage to go public like Mark Stepnoski. And that's what I really admire. People like Jesse Ventura, Willie Nelson, who are famous, they're wealthy, they've got a lot to lose, but they know they've got even more to lose if they don't stand up against this evil. If this evil isn't confronted, it's going to grow and grow and grow like cancer. We did find the phone number, and that brings up another issue. Architects for and Engineers for 9/11 Truth is helping the operation out of New York with the PayPal and the website building and the infrastructure. And 5% of the donations go to them to fund the infrastructure, 5% to first responders, which I think is great. And then, of course, 90% goes to the ad. So it's buildingwhat.org. And that is so exciting. Please donate today. But I just wanted to bring Mark Stepnoski back and Tony Zambodi to just say closing comments from both of you. Anything else you'd like to comment on, Mark Stepnoski?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks for having us on. I appreciate the time to talk about this. And obviously, anyone who's listening, I would urge them to vote with their pocketbook. That's one thing you can do nowadays. Your vote might not count for much as far as the Democratic or the Republican Party. Your vote might not count much if it's made on a computer, but if you want to feel like you can actually make a difference, then vote with your pocketbook and try to help get these ads put on TV so that more people can become educated and we can create further awareness about what really happened on September 11th, 2001.
Mark, why do you think it's been mainly NFL players that have contacted me? Is it a different breed? I haven't really been contacted by other sports.
That's a good question. I honestly don't know if I can give you a good answer. I'm glad to hear it. It's nice to know that other guys in my former profession might feel the same way I do. But it's hard to really say, why that is. But I'm thankful that that is the case.
Yeah, I just wish they'd go public. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. I know the truth. Maybe NFL guys have contacted me because of you. I bet you've kind of led the way in that. I'm kind of answering my own question. By the way, we did find the number, and it's to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. If you want to donate by phone, it's 510. And I'm reading this from 10 feet away, guys, so make sure I'm saying this right. 510-292-4710, 510-292-4710. I got a big screen TV across the room. They put websites up, and I'm staring across the hall here. But I just want to thank you both for coming on. We're basically out of time to get into more engineering, but you guys have agreed to come back on together and say 2-3 months to look at phase 3 of what's going on. We've seen phase 1, big victory. Now we're into the second quarter. Boy, I'm really doing a lot of football analogies here. And we'll see what happens in the third and fourth quarter. But I just want to salute you all and hope you have a great new year. Any closing comments, Tony?
I'd just like to thank Mark for his articulateness, and I'm very impressed. And I think I appreciate you speaking out from your position, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks for being on the show with me today.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Well, it's like Mark said, the truth will come out in the end. It was Victor Hugo that said if you try to bury the truth, it will explode with such force later, to totally destroy the liars. And no army can stop an idea whose time has come, as Victor Hugo said. Let me say bye to you both here during the break, gentlemen. I salute you and appreciate everybody, especially the listeners, who have made Buildingwhat.org TV ad campaign such a huge success. Geraldo Rivera coming out for 9/11 Truth because of it. And no doubt, Judge Knapp said the whole thing's a complete fraud. We salute those men of courage as well. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.